Hello, I'm Graham Elwood, and welcome back to the Church of Batman. Happy New Year. There's Batman. My girlfriend and I were playing Yahtzee earlier, a game of skill and chance. So we've talked a little bit about the election in some other videos, and the question that many of you have, that I have had, is what do we do? Clearly our political system is broken in America. And what do we do? The two-party system is a problem. The Electoral College is a problem. So where do we begin? I want to talk about open primaries. And it's an organization, openprimaries.org. And just full disclosure at the top here, this is not, they haven't paid me to talk about it on this show, but I have worked for them in the past. I've shot some commercials for Amendment V that was just in South Dakota, and some other stuff for them. So, but the reason I want to talk about them is, and why I've worked for them, because if the Republicans or Democrats hired me, I would have more than likely said no. Why I support this is, so part of why this system is broken is the two parties control every aspect of politics in America. There's no mention of two parties in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. George Washington, at his farewell speech, when he was done resigning as president, the first president of the United States of America, warned against the formation of political parties. And of course, everyone quickly went off and formed political parties. So the problem that has happened in America is now the parties and the politicians that are within these two parties are not serving the people. They're serving the parties. So what has happened is it starts at the primary level. So this past primary for this presidential election, 26 million people could not vote. They were registered independents. Basically, technically, you're called like an undeclared voter. In most states, when you register to vote, you have to pick what party you're with. And if you decide you don't want to pick a party, then you're what's called an undeclared voter, basically an independent. So 26 million independents were not allowed to vote in the primaries this year in 2016. 29 million people voted for Trump and Hillary in the primary. Total. 29 million people voted for Hillary and Trump in the primary. Let that number sink in. 26 million people were not allowed to vote. If we would have had, if those 26 million people would have been allowed to vote in the primary, maybe we wouldn't have had the two most hated candidates in the history of presidential races in this country. So how do we fix this, you say? Let's go to California. In 2010, the state of California voted for what's called a top two primary system, where you vote in the primary and the top two people with votes advanced to the general election. And they allowed independents to vote in the primary in California. So I'm an independent in the state of California, and I was allowed to vote in the Democratic primary. The Republicans won't let independents vote in the primary. What's that tell you? But it's not just Republicans. Both parties have openly said, Debbie Wasserman Schultz has said that she does not support open primaries. And the head of the RNC has said the same thing. They don't support open primaries. So now, many of you might be saying, well, Graham, isn't it the party's right to have an open primary? Well, then my response to that is, then just have a closed primary. Either go behind closed doors and say, this is our candidate, or actually have a real fair election. Because right now, like the Democratic primary was rigged. It was fixed. The Republican primary, not that much better. The Democrats have the superdelegate thing, which is ridiculous. So, and also you should know this, your tax dollars pay for elections. To run an election, American tax dollars pay. So the two parties are now taking your tax dollars and also saying a bunch of you can't vote. And independents are the largest growing segment of the electorate. So going back to the two-party, the top two system in California. Now, some people have said, oh, but look at this now. There are some districts in California where they had 2 Democrats in the general election in November. That's not right. Here's actually why it is a good thing. So what happened is there was a couple of districts that are typically almost always Democrat. The Democrats always win that district. The Republicans just put up someone that they know they can't win for a Senate or House seat. They just put it up and they're like, we know we can't win this. We're just going to put this person up there. We're not going to put much money behind the campaign. We know this person's going to lose. So what happened with the top 2 is you had 2 Democrats, and in one of them you had like a older sort of typical old school, support the party Democrat, and then you had a younger, more populist, more progressive Democrat. And what they had to do then in the general election, they had to campaign to everybody in the district. Republicans, Green Party, Libertarian, Independent, Socialists, whatever. Because before in the old way, all I had to do was win the primary if I'm a Democrat in a primarily Democratic district, and then I got it. It's a slam dunk. And since 20-some% of the population votes in the primaries, that's how small it is of a pool it is of voters. So it's easy then for the parties to manipulate this. So now what happened in California, you had people who really had to campaign. They had to run an issue-based campaign. They had to say, this is why I'm the best candidate. These are the issues. This is where I stand on this. Not just, oh, I'm a Democrat. You have to vote for me. And I don't care about what the Republicans think in my district because there's only a handful of them. And that's the same thing, too, if it were an all-Republican district. They have to campaign to everybody. It's the best system. There was an amendment in the state of South Dakota. It was Amendment V, and it got 45% of the vote. And it ended up not passing, but South Dakota has 1 million people living in the state. The whole state has 1 million people. 115,000 independents weren't allowed to vote in the primary. More than 10% of the population was not allowed to participate in the process. It's a problem. If you go to openprimaries.org, you can learn way more about it and see where your state is and what you can do to help fix this political system. Because if we open up a democracy, there's no case in history where a fully engaged population has a bad democracy. The more people that are involved, and so many people, oh, my vote doesn't count. And I get it. I get why you say my vote doesn't count. So go to openprimaries.org, and that is where you can learn about how you can make a difference. Go to openprimaries.org. Thanks for watching. Graham Elwood, Church of Batman.